The Vikings left their native countries to engage in commerce and raiding. However, by the 10th century, they had started to bring a new religion back with them in addition to loot and goods. Vikings who revered Norse gods like Odin and Thor soon coexisted with those who believed in Jesus Christ as their savior, which ineluctably resulted in strife. Hello guys and welcome back to Historical Saga. Today we have an exciting video discussing about the Vikings and how they became Christians. Before moving further, please subscribe to our channel Historical Saga. Vikings, also known as the Norsemen or Northmen, were Scandinavian maritime warriors who invaded and settled a large portion of Europe between the 9th and the 11th centuries. Their disruptive presence had a significant impact on European history. These barbaric warriors from Denmark, Norway and Sweden were likely inspired to carry out their raids by a variety of circumstances, from domestic overpopulation to the relative helplessness of victims overseas. The landowner chieftains and clan chiefs, their retainers, freemen and any young interpret clan members who were out for adventure and plunder compromised the Vikings. These Scandinavians were independent farmers at home, but when they were at sea, they were robbers and plunderers. These bands would raid villages and townships throughout the European coastline while navigating the seas on their longships. While Charlemagne converted pagans to Christianity with the sword, the Vikings were largely converted to Christianity without violence. Early Viking traders saw that they lost out on commercial agreements and transactions when the other side was Christian. Non-Christians and Muslims were discriminated against by Christian traders who tended to offer other Christians greater business and better deals. Consequently, a Viking trader might don a cross when he's around Christians but switch it back to his regular Thor's hammer when he gets home. The Viking trader could practice both faiths as long as he wasn't baptized, which was typical in Scandinavia for the following several decades. The Viking North first rejected Christianity. They were happy with their own gods and adored them. From the 700s to the 800s, Christian priests and monks from England and France started making missionary journeys to the Viking homelands. However, it took centuries for the Vikings to become Christians. Many individuals continued to practice their pagan beliefs and hold on to their old gods even after a Danish or Swedish king converted to Christianity and declared his subjects to be Christians. But by the end of the Viking Age, the majority of Vikings had converted to Christianity and were buried and baptized in it. The idea that early Vikings were heathen enemies of Christians is rejected by the majority of contemporary researchers. Although they did adhere to pagan beliefs, the majority of scholars now hold that religion had nothing to do with the church attacks. For the Vikings, monasteries and cathedrals were essentially weakly fortified structures hiding wealth. It is well known that the Vikings revered several deities. This may help to explain why some people were so eager to embrace the idea of a Christian deity. The Vikings came into more frequent touch with the Christian world as a result of their invasions on the British Isles and other locations. Trading with heathens was forbidden for Christians. Therefore, it is thought that in order to trade, many Vikings had to go through some sort of temporary christening. It wasn't a full baptism, but it demonstrated a willingness to embrace Christianity. That was sufficient to allow for trade. Nearly all of history's greatest Viking explorers, kings and warriors were Christians. They weren't converted by anyone, they did it on their own. Modern Viking fans frequently brag about how willing they are to attack and subjugate the helpless, but when Olaf Tryggvason, arguably the toughest Viking of all time, accepted baptism at a seer's urging and treated Christ as Norway's supreme war god, those same believers started using the victim card. We were just going about our business, practicing human sacrifice, enslavement and indiscriminate plundering when these nasty evil Christians arrived and beat us up. However, those Christians were not outsiders. They were Vikings fighting against other Vikings using Viking tactics. Furthermore, they excelled at it. Olaf, who was more pagan than Christian in behavior, may be said to have committed to Christ, but not to the Ten Commandments. And certainly he committed some very horrific acts. He didn't do anything that wasn't standard procedure in Norse battle, though. The dual assertion that Christians are both cowards and violent oppressors simultaneously falls flat as a result. Like their pagan forefathers, Christians were farmers, soldiers, sailors, and of course, Vikings. Hey guys, why don't you unlock the subscribe button now itself, as we have more exciting information coming ahead. Vikings, from heathens to Christians, Denmark. While Harald Klak, a previous Danish Viking king, had been baptized in 826, it wasn't until King Harald Bluetooth that Christianity really began to take root in Denmark. Although the new faith coexisted with the old for the following few hundred years, Harald Bluetooth raised the jailing stone and declared that he had converted all Danes to Christianity. In Ribe, the oldest city in Denmark, construction on the first stone cathedral began in 1110. In 1134, it was finished. At that point, the majority of the Danish population had converted to Christianity. Vikings, from heathens to Christians, Norway. Although a few earlier kings had converted to Christianity, Norway didn't receive Christianity until Olaf Tryggvason's successful uprising against the heathen king Håkon Jarl in 995. Olaf Tryggvason rose to power as King Olaf I and began forcibly converting the Norwegians to Christianity. He slaughtered Vikings who refused to convert and set fire to pagan temples. All of Norway became Christian by these terrible means, at least in name. Olaf's efforts are credited in a number of sagas with converting Iceland and the other Western islands to Christianity. Vikings, from heathens to Christian, Sweden. Christianity started to spread in Sweden during the late Viking Age, and episcopal churches were formed in the 11th century. The slow conversion of Sweden to Christianity was likewise fraught with conflict and violence, although overall the two religions coexisted peacefully for many years. The majority of Swedish Vikings at this time supported a gradual conversion to the new faith while maintaining a few of its customs. But by the 12th century, Christianity predominated in Sweden. The Christian Vikings of the 10th and 11th centuries did not act very different from their heathen predecessors, despite the fact that the Viking Age would come to an end and the Norse warrior mentality would gradually cool down as Scandinavia became more like the rest of Europe. Yet they continued to be incredibly warlike and were just as prone to participate in blood feuds, raids, slavery, polygamy, and other traditional Viking traits, much like their pagan ancestors. Additionally, the values of the Vikings, which prioritized glory over all else in battle, remained unchanged. This was clearly demonstrated at the Battle of Clontarf, Ireland 1014 and Stamford Bridge, England 1066, where mixed-faith Viking forces chose annihilation over dishonor and as such lost anywhere from 80 to 90% of their forces. These conflicts and others like them demonstrate how little it mattered to the Vikings whether they went to Valhalla or heaven. One of the distinguishing characteristics of the Viking Age was the ideological clash between Norse heathenism and Christianity. Many of the North converted to Christianity quite gradually as a result of their evolving morality and growing worldview. Christianity did not put an end to the Viking Age or change the nature of the Vikings. Vikings who converted to Christianity participated in some of the greatest and bloodiest wars in history. Both sides agree that one of the most obvious ways to integrate the Norse into the rest of Europe was through Christianity. The vitality of the Northerners was harnessed by the rulers of England, France, and the Byzantine Empire, while the Northern monarchs exploited it to further their conquest for dominance and nation-building. The Scandinavia of the 12th century was substantially different from the Scandinavia of the 9th century due to the influence of Christianity and the membership in the church. The Vikings shared Odin's inquiring inclination in addition to their ferocious character. Both their old and new beliefs provided them with various perspectives on the world and methods for expressing themselves via art and activism. Even if there may be violent interactions between the two faiths, there may also be beneficial interactions. That's it, folks. We have come to the ending of today's video. I hope you had learned something new about the Vikings and how they became Christians. And while you're still here, do us a quick favor by subscribing to our channel, Historical Saga. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.